This is crystal plate. Crystal Plate is a Final Cut Pro title plugin that's inspired by Apple's liquid glass aesthetic that they have in macOS and in iOS, but it brings a little bit of a flair to it. There's a bunch of really cool things that we can do with this plugin, so let's dive into Final Cut Pro and I'll give you a little tour. Now, over here in Final Cut Pro, I'm going to take you on a little bit of a tour through the Crystal Plate title plugin. Now, the first thing that you would have had to have done was install the plugin. If you haven't installed the plugin already, make sure that you go to this website right here. That'll tell you everything that you need to know on how to get the plugin installed. In my opinion, the easiest way to get the plugin installed is to go down and use the Final Cut Bros plugin installer created by Dylan Bates. This is just a super quick way to get plugins installed for Final Cut Pro. Now, like I said, Crystal Plate is a title plugin. So in order to find it, you're going to go over here to your titles. You're going to click on titles, and then you're going to find the Emberden category here. Okay, to use the Crystal Plate title, just like any other title, you're just going to drag this down onto your timeline like this. And you can see right away that it creates that crystal plate in the background, that glass-looking plate behind your text here. And now all you have to do is go over here to your published parameters, and we can actually start to change the way that this glass looks. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is this little animation section up here. The first option is to build in and decide whether you want to build in or not. And basically what that's saying is, do you want the little animation that happens at the beginning to happen? And all that animation is a nice little shine that goes across the text. So it looks like this. And now you have a little bit of control over that. So first of all, if you uncheck that, then that animation will not happen. Okay, but if you have it checked, like this, then you have the ability to make a couple of changes. So let's actually just step into it a little bit so you can see the animation right there on that frame. So this is this kind of like white animation that goes across the text. And here you can decide if you want it to be blurred. So you can kind of like drop it down, pick it up, and you can even go beyond this number here. So you could blur it way up if you wanted to like that. And so you have the option to change the animation blur, and you also have the option to change the radius. And if you change this radius, it just makes it thicker, okay? And so it's just a couple of tiny little adjustments there that allow you to change the way that it animates at the very beginning. And again, if you don't want the animation, all you have to do is uncheck that and it's gone. It's not there anymore. So I'm just going to reset these parameters really quick. And let's talk about this actual shape section here. Now in the shape section, we have a few different options here. First of all, we can control the padding on the x-axis. So if you increase this or decrease this, it's going to basically add space on each side of the text. Now this is clipped to the actual width of the text. So you can't go below the text. The numbers will go there, but you're not going to be able to make it smaller than the text. So just keep that in mind. It will clip and it won't actually let you go down below the size of the text. So the X padding here is just the distance on each side of the text. And then the Y padding is the space that's on the top and the bottom of the text, okay? So it allows you to basically change the size of the glass plate that's behind your text. I'll just reset those again. And then here is roundness. Now the roundness, you can actually change how round the plate is, okay? You can go all the way back to a rectangle plate, and using the roundness feature here, you can make the glass plate even smaller than the text. So if you animated this, you could get a nice little kind of effect or animation of it growing out like that. So that's just something to keep in mind. A lot of these different controls that are in Crystal Plate, you can animate them too, because they have keyframes over here. So you can animate these and get different animation effects with the actual plugin. So that allows you to control the roundness over here. It defaults to 100, which gives it this nice round effect here. But of course, you can change that to whatever you want. Now, the next section down here is the glow section. If we disable this, you can see that you can barely really see the glass effects at all. So keep in mind that the glow effect here is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for this actual plugin. So if you want to get that kind of really solid glass look, you're going to probably want to keep glow enabled and then just adjust some of these settings in here, okay? So the outer brightness speaks for itself. It's how bright the outer edge of the actual glass background is. The outer glow gives us actual glow around the outside like this. So you can kind of increase this and decrease this however you want. The inner brightness is the brightness of the entire plate on the inside. So if you go down, it will actually be black, okay? Because it's going to go completely without brightness. So you want to kind of keep it up here, but you can play with this number and find the actual effect that you want. And then the inner glow is the glow that's happening inside of the actual container. So you can just increase and decrease this to get the right amount of almost kind of refraction that's happening on the glass or the glow. So the inner glow is just another way to kind of get a nice refractive look to the glass. The edge intensity here, that is basically making the edge of the glass more obvious and intense. It's almost kind of adding another layer of refraction to the glass. It's almost as if it's increasing the sharpness at the edge. It's like allowing significantly more or less light to go through the edge of the glass like this, okay? And then of course down here you have a mix option that allows you to kind of mix and match the amount of glow that you want in. So you can either have no glow, or you can have 100, or you can have anywhere in between that. So it gives you a little more control over how much intensity or how much of all of these different glow properties you want to apply to the plate. Now, the next option down here is called glint, and this is a really cool option. And actually, to show you this, I'm going to bring the title plugin over this clip right here, because this clip right here has light coming through the windows. And because this is a glass background here, as you move it around different sources of light and things like that, it's going to look different as it goes over those things because light's going to travel through the actual glass plate and it's going to have different like artifacts and refraction, and it's going to change the way that it looks as light travels through it. And the glint option over here is a way to kind of control the amount of like sparkle that happens as the light passes through it. So if we enable glint, you can see right away that if I move it around through this light, it's going to act and look different depending on how much light is going through it, okay? So that's a really cool effect in and of itself. But now we can adjust some of these different parameters here. We can adjust the exposure. That's basically how bright that glint is going to be. So we can kind of go up and down with that like this. You can adjust the tint either in the positive or in the negative. You can go all the way up to 3 or all the way down to -3, okay? This is essentially leaning it more toward like the green or the red side of tint, okay? And you can also adjust the tint color. So let's say you want the tint to be more red or more green or more blue, whatever. You can adjust the actual glint tint to be whatever color you want it to be. You can also adjust the glint size. If you adjust this, it's going to expand outward even more, okay? And you could go up really big or you could kind of come down really small, however you want it to look. You can also adjust the number of streaks. Now, as you adjust this, you're going to see that it doesn't really look like it did that much. It just looks like it got brighter. But if we were to reduce the glint softness over here, you can start to see that if I move this around into the light like that, there are actually like streaks coming off of this where the light is kind of passing through the glass and it's getting separated. And so if we change the number of streaks now, you can see that it's kind of more or less streaks depending on how many you want. You can go all the way up to 10 streaks. And then, of course, you can go down to 1, okay, so that you just have 1 streak here. I like to keep it higher, but you can play around with this and just get the desired effect that you want. The glow amount here, that's going to be kind of the intensity of the glow, right? So you can go all the way up to 50 with this, and you can kind of go all the way back down to 0. And so it's really just a way to kind of increase or decrease the intensity of the glow. The glint angle, if you take a look at these little streaks right here, that allows you to adjust kind of how they're angled on the actual glass itself. And it may not be as relevant when you have a lot of different streaks in here, but if you only have a few streaks like 3, as you change this angle, it's going to change like which way the light is actually passing through it. And so I thought that that was just a cool effect. You can kind of make it so that the light glints through the actual glass itself. I'm going to go ahead and just pop the streaks back up to 10. And you can also change here the intensity of the glint. So you can kind of reduce the intensity, make it so it's not quite as bright and shiny, or you can increase the intensity all the way up. So you can go way up to 5, make it so that the intensity is insane, or you can go all the way down to 0 so that the intensity is like super minimal. I'm just going to kind of go happy medium here so we can keep seeing what it's doing. And then there's also the color fringing option here. And the more you increase this, the more you're going to kind of get this little color fringing on the side here. And then if you reduce it, you'll see that that color fringing starts to go away. So that's basically kind of more adding prism effect to the actual glint itself, the different streaks that are coming off. It adds that kind of prism effect to it. And then, of course, you have the ability to kind of mix and match this as well. So you can increase or decrease the intensity at which all of these different options are being applied at once. So for me, glint is one of my favorite features in this plugin. It just adds a really cool kind of shine that happens as light passes through the actual glass. Now I'm going to disable that so it's not there anymore. And I'll just kind of pull this down here so we can see it a little bit better. It's important to remember that if you apply this plugin to something that's super bright, that super brightness is going to get amplified as it comes through the glass. So when you first install this plugin, and if you open it on some sort of video that's very bright and it just ends up looking like a white blob like this, don't panic. It just means that you need to change some of the settings to either like dampen it down, or you need to change its position so that it's not sitting in front of something super bright like this. And those are the different glow options. So if we keep moving down through here, now there's this appearance section. And in the appearance section, we have a bunch of different options for how it's going to look. So I'm going to take us back over here, and I'm just going to move this up here so you can kind of see everything a little bit better. And first of all, let's talk about the blur options here. So if I uncheck the zoom blur here, you can see that this kind of moved. And what that's doing is it's allowing us to kind of blur and zoom at the same time as you're looking through the glass. So if we increase this up, you can see that it kind of zooms in a little bit on whatever it's over top of. This is just a really cool option that would add a little bit of more realism to your glass because it allows the actual distortion to happen in the background and makes it look like things are kind of getting warped a little bit as you look through the glass. Play around with these settings here because it's going to kind of make or break how your glass looks, I think. And also there's a Gaussian blur option here, and that's a really good way if you want to, for example, kind of frost your glass over a little bit. You can increase and decrease with the slider here, but I've found that in order to get the nice frosty look that I like to go for, you have to kind of zoom way up on here. But by doing that, you can actually get a nice frosted look to the glass as well. I'm just going to reset all the parameters really quick just so that we can kind of keep talking about this. So that's the zoom blur and the Gaussian blur. Now we also have the option to add a prism effect. Now it's already applied by default a little bit. So if I were to kind of move around on the object here, you can see that the colors are kind of slightly separating into a rainbow. But now you can actually increase that amount. So over here in Prism, if we go to amount and we increase it way up, you can see that the colors really kind of separate and pull apart there, okay? And you can also adjust the angle at which those colors are coming out of there. So you can just kind of move the actual colors around by changing the angle of the prism itself. Again, if you animate any of these different options here, you can get some really cool effects. I'm going to reset that parameter real quick and that one. And now we also have the option for glass distortion here. If I disable it, you can see that the outer edge kind of looks a little more plain. When we add the glass distortion back in, it adds like a really heavy amount of refraction. And so here we can adjust the amount, right? We can kind of make it a little more intense, a little less intense. We can adjust the softness here to make it look like a harder edge or a softer edge. And again, we have the ability to kind of mix that in and out as we want. Another cool option here is the ability to colorize the glass. So basically, if you have your crystal plate title here and you want the glass itself to have a color to it, you can check the colorize option here, and then you can adjust the intensity. So if you increase it, it'll be a brighter color. Decrease it, it'll be less intense. Now, let's say we want it to be about there. Now, if we want to change the colors, we have to click these little options over here. You have the ability to colorize the white and the black. So if we colorize the white, we can take this, let's say we'll make it yellow. Anything that's kind of on the whiter end of the spectrum is going to fall into yellow. But if we go over here and we remap these, we can, let's say, remap the blacks to green. like this, that kind of green or something, that means that anything that's kind of more in the black range or in the blacker colors, that's going to go a green colorization. And so you can kind of have more control here over which ones you actually do. And then you can dive even deeper in here and adjust the red, green, and blue if you want to. It's just kind of a fun way to add a little bit more texture and a little bit more color and something more interesting to the actual glass plate behind your title. Another really fun option in here is this glass block option. If you check this, it's essentially going to pixelate the glass. It's going to make it look like it's kind of a glass block plate. It's basically taking the image and compressing it into a bunch of different blocks, but keeping it inside of the glass. And so now you have this option. You can adjust where the center of the image is in this glass. And you'll notice that if I go too far, it'll actually start to take the plate away. And by doing that, you can get some really cool effects in here, okay? So you can adjust the center X and Y and adjust it so that it kind of goes off of the image, and then the actual glass itself is going to kind of deteriorate. You can get some really cool effects that way. You can also set this back to 0 and adjust the scale, and that's going to change the size of the image itself. So then it's going to scale everything. So again, you can get some really cool animated effects here. You can even make it so that there's no plate at all. And then as you animate it, it kind of like pixelates in, or it kind of gets created out of thin air. So there's really cool animations in here. Also, you can change the angle of the plates. So if you just flip it around like this, you can see that you're adjusting the angle, and you can see kind of the image of the bird in the background flipping around. So adjusting the angle is another really good way to get some cool effects in here. Also, you can adjust the tile size. So if you want to make the tiles much bigger, or if you want to make the tiles much smaller, you can. If you get to a certain point, 0, of course, the tiles disappear. So you just want to tinker around with this setting and find what actually works for you. And of course, just like most of the other settings in here, we can mix and match this effect that's happening in. So you can either have absolutely no glass block, or you can have 100% glass block, or anywhere in between, okay? These mix options in here are a really good way to apply an effect, but do it subtly. Okay, we're almost done here. Again, I'm going to reset everything so that we can go back down here. I'm going to uncheck glass block. It's no longer something I want on. And now let's look at this crystallize option down here. Crystallize is another one of my favorite options in here. If you check this box, it turns the glass itself into crystals. So now you actually have your real crystal plate. And you can adjust the different size of the crystals. You could go very, very tiny, or you can kind of make them bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can adjust that. You can adjust it all the way up to 64. So you're going to adjust that just like this and get different size crystals. Now, the next option here is the speed, and you can adjust how fast the actual crystals are moving because these crystals are animated. If you have the crystallize option checked, the crystals themselves are going to be animated. If I play it, you can see that the crystals are moving. Now, you can set the speed all the way down to 0, and that will actually stop the crystals from moving, and you won't have to worry about it. However, if you want them to move, you do have control over how fast they're moving. The range that you can do is from 0 to 2, and that will actually adjust how quickly the crystals are moving. You can also turn on or off the smoothing. This is basically just smoothing out the crystals a little bit, and you can see if you look at the edges of the crystals, when I uncheck that, it adds a little bit of roughness to it. When I check it, it makes them a little more smooth. It's basically just bending the crystal itself a little bit, making it a little more smooth so the light isn't reflecting off of some of the parts differently. And again, we have a mix option here to kind of bring in and out as much of the crystal as you want. And then finally, the last option here in crystal plate, and let me undo crystal here. The last option here is refraction. If I uncheck that, all of that nice little refraction that was happening around the edge goes away. If I bring it back, now I get all that very nice detailed refraction. I can increase the softness of it and make it a much more soft refraction, or I can decrease it and make it a more harsh refraction like that. You can increase and decrease the amount of refraction that's happening here. You can also change the channel that that refraction is happening on. So it can either happen on the red, green, blue, alpha, or the luminance channels. It has kind of a different effect depending on which one you put it on. So if you put it on the blue, for example, it's going to have a different appearance than it would on the green channel because only the greens are getting affected here, or only the reds. Or if you put it on luminance, it's essentially affecting all of them. And then, of course, we can mix the amount of refraction in and out as well. And that is all of the different options that you have here in Crystal Plate. But because Crystal Plate is a title plugin, you also have all of the different title options in here. So any of the text that you create in here, you can change it to be whatever you want. So you can say, I love this plugin, and you can actually change the text. Of course, you can change the font. It's defaulted to Enter, but you can change it to whatever you want. You can change the size of the text like this, alignment, any of the different text options that you're used to having with Final Cut Pro titles, you have them here in Crystal Plate. And also you have the ability to change it out for 3D text, or you can change the face options like the color, the fill, the opacity, that kind of thing, outline, glow, drop shadow. You have all of the typical options that you would have with a title plugin. So that was Crystal Plate. It's just a fun title plugin, and I think that there's a lot that you're going to be able to do with it and some really cool things that you'll be able to create with it. If you're interested in picking up Crystal Plate, you can hit the link down in the description. And since it's February, and February is my birthday month, I've decided I'm going to put a coupon code down in the description that'll give you 10% off the cost of Crystal Plate. And the coupon code is going to expire at 11:59 p.m. on my birthday, February 11th. So act now, use the coupon code, and get an extra 10% off the plugin. Because why not? As always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.